Thank you for watching our shows. June and I love God and we love to share. We thank God for all the good things come from Him. Our number is 859-750-0000 and our email is js7500000@gmail.com. You can check us out on our Facebook page, John Stephenson, or on our website, www.stephenson.com. You'll see some little pictures as we go along here of the family, me when I was a child, or June and I, and some new ones this year, and some back when we were children as the GEIMAN family, and some of our friends such as Gil Hammond and Art Regal and Sheriff Corsenborn in Kenton County. An old campaign picture of me and Bruce Ferguson and Tom Kelly coming into Burlington on a campaign trip. And of course Eric, who almost always at the end of our shows, our little nephew Eric GEIMAN, gives the thumbs up on the shows, him and June. And we like to think the thumbs up are on this show, Europe by Train. Traveling through 7 countries in Europe. June and I, we took off and traveled through all those countries, didn't we, June? Austria, Hungary, Yugoslavia, Greece, Italy, Germany, Switzerland, and I just had a great time, didn't we?
It was a wonderful experience.
And so you're going to see some pictures here shortly after the family pictures. There's the Stephenson family, all the kids. We were with some of them tonight, Holly and Pam and Michelle and Guy, and unfortunately Ben Cloud passed away. Our Guy's father-in-law, Amy GEIMAN, my daughter-in-law's father, who was a great man and a lot of great friends, and there was a wonderful prayer offered in his name tonight. So we were glad to be there and be a part of that. You see our little cats, we got 4 of them still, and then of course there's June, your little beetle, right? Which was
resurrected from the dead.
It was totaled.
Humpty Dumpty.
Thanks to help from the insurance company and a lot of good people at Mako. And there's the grandchildren again, Tegan and Courtney and Pagan and Dalton and Austin and of course now we got great grandchildren.
This is a
Lincoln,
great nephew.
And that's a great nephew
Little
there.
Parker.
Yeah, little Parker. Boy, we'll just sort of chat about some of these pictures. My little sister Judy was in a terrible automobile accident and hit by 2 young fellows on narcotics and being chased by the police department up in Ohio somewhere. And that's Miss Debbie, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Debbie Garnclough, who was our maid of honor and one of June's best friends for a lifetime. Of course, Larry Hensley back there, and my old cousin Darius Beach and Jim Noakes, and some other good friends there. Miss June, my favorite subject on my pictures and my shows, as you can see. There's her little beetle, all repaired, and of course I'm acting silly as usual.
As usual.
There I am all dressed up in my new black shirt from Miss
You
June.
look pretty good there, John.
Where we went out and I sang a
like
love
a weather
song.
woman.
You certainly do, and
the
you're right
weather
on
today.
television there. And I'm wearing my brand new tie and black shirt that you got me to sing You Are So Beautiful to 15 couples that got married out with Kenny Brown, the county clerk, and Miss Sparks, and all the good people out there at the Boone County Courthouse. There's our brother-in-law, Jay Brander, World War II veteran.
It's one of my favorite places to walk, Highland Cemetery. And if you want to find a beautiful place to walk, Highland Cemetery in Fort Mitchell.
There's Eric and June again. There you see some pictures of Mary Ruth when she was a young girl, and oh, those go back, and there's of course
There's
my
our little baby
granddaughter.
Tegan and her hubby Devon. They live in San Diego.
And they came in for the funeral services today. And my brother-in-law Jay.
Ooh, who's that hot
there,
looking
she was
couple?
a hot couple there, dancing at the inaugural ball down in state capitol.
Dance me and world me.
I would dance you and world you did. And when I got elected superintendent of education for the state of Kentucky. There's June and I in some later pictures. One of June's favorite pictures.
Yeah. Rewatching our honeymoon, which will be 26 years ago this March 31st.
And you'll see about 9 shows on each one. Well, let's see, there'll be 2 hours, so it'll be about 18 one-hour shows on Time Warner Cable, and also fiber optics from the Cincinnati Bell Telephone Company on the public access channels 422 and 21 in Kenton County, 21 in Campbell County, as well as 422. And then the fiber optics channels too, your public access channel.
It was a wonderful trip.
Yes, it was. After this picture, you're going to see some pictures actually from the trip. Then we'll close with a few other family pictures, but the trip is what we're focused on here. So if this is the beginning of our series, you see it, wish us well and watch the trip. It'll be on different days. Of course, there's one of the castles that we saw, and you'll see some pictures of it later here. This is our Europe by Train series here. We filmed it back in 1989 and re-showing it here in 2015 with our 25th anniversary.
No.
Some of the beautiful 26th?
26.
26th
You were
anniversary.
close, but no cigar.
Close? Well, that's the way I usually am.
Our 26th wedding anniversary trip starting March 31st.
The Vienna Choir and the Vienna Orchestra there at the Opera House in Vienna. Of course, that's where we flew into, and we stayed with Renata. And of course, there's some beautiful pictures and some of the beautiful gardens of you and I together on our honeymoon, of course. Don't forget, folks. And
where did we go, John?
we went to Vienna and Austria. And of course, back then I was a pipe smoker. Still got a lot of my pipes. That book I'm looking at, by the way, is the Frommer's travel book, which we used a great deal. We never had a single room reserved on the trip. Stayed in some beautiful places and saw some beautiful gardens. Overlooking the city here, this is where we went up and saw some of the, I guess those are grape arbors there.
Yes.
A magnificent trip though. Vienna was a beautiful place and Austria was a beautiful place.
Where else did we go? Austria.
Well, after we left Vienna and Austria, we headed over by train to Budapest. But before that, that night we went down and toured the inner city area of Austria and of Vienna. You saw some of the modern artwork there that on one of the buildings. We went to the downtown area and saw the St. Stephen's Church, I believe it was, which was a beautiful facility. There it is right there. They were working on part of it. Remember going through that big church?
Stunning. It was a stunning church.
Oh, beautiful. And the interesting thing about these places is the age of them. It's great that they're keep restoring them and keep their beauty up. And you can go through these countries who are not much larger than some of our states. But it's a great time to travel. There's the friends that we made in Vienna. The Corinthians
in Vienna.
And there's an interesting story about the Corinthians. They just tried to take a little advantage of us.
We won't go into
We won't go into the details, but let's just put it this way. When you're over traveling in a foreign country, you have to keep your guard up,
Be
watch
careful.
what people are doing. And remember this, I was with a very beautiful lady, and she was very, very attractive, and there were some Corinthians that would like to have laid claim to my beautiful lady.
But
So
John came to the rescue.
John came to the rescue.
It was a wonderful trip. So much to see. We traveled for 30 days.
And in the video itself, you get to see the couple that we stayed with there in Vienna, Renata, and I believe his name was Husan. Renata, yes.
They're a very sweet couple.
And there's Miss June on our first bed there, and you'll see some pictures of each of us flying around here in Vienna before we take off for Budapest. I almost missed the train, by the way.
You sure did.
I went down into the train area at the restrooms, and over there you had to pay to use the restroom. Well, I didn't have any change on me, so I had to hunt down some change, and I almost missed the train. June was headed off with the money, and I was about to be left behind. Made it by a couple of minutes.
Back then, we were still looking at Yugoslavia and Hungary as communistic countries. So
The Iron Curtain had not come down yet. This was in 1989 that we were there in April and May for about a little over a month on the trip. So some beautiful sights.
There was so much to see that what I remember the most was we never wanted to close our eyes. We were afraid we'd miss something, so we did a lot of our traveling by train, which made it so exciting because we didn't have to do the driving. We just sat there and just took it all in, which you also are going to be able to enjoy as well as if you were there. John got some wonderful footage of countrysides and cities and towns and villages and the people and the foods and the chocolates.
What you're going to see now going through here is some of the rooms in the beautiful castle that we showed you pictures of. I think it was Chambron. Chambron, okay.
Chambron.
June has to help me out here a little bit. But you'll see some of those beautiful rooms here, and it's amazing the number of rooms that they had in this facility for the Habsburg family, I think it was.
Yes.
That was
Habsburg Dynasty.
the Habsburg Dynasty.
We felt like royalty for several hours at a time.
Beautifully maintained, and of course mainly it's a tremendous tourist attraction now.
You know, the one thing you said, John, is so true, is that the age of the structures, the buildings, we're talking 600, 700, 800 years
ago.
old. In fact, when we were in Germany, in Munich, there were family businesses that had been handed off to their descendants for over 500 years. The bakery, the pharmacy, it was just, it is amazing. Absolutely amazing. There's a great pride in what people do in these countries.
And it's very interesting how they've taken not only the parks that are over there and these beautiful dynasty homes and restored them and kept them up for tourism reasons, and it's a great asset for their country. But the parks are used actually by the people. These lands that were once owned by the dictators, the kings and the queens, and the lords and those in charge are now being used by the citizens as parks, and they belong to them, which is sort of a neat change of venue. And the places are absolutely gorgeous, almost opulent, but the best of the best and the best of the workers, skilled craftsmen, worked on these places, and to build them and to make them the beautiful places that they are. Traveling by the train, by the way, we did that by U-Rail passes that we ordered in advance so that we could get on and off the trains wherever we went across Europe.
And buses.
And buses. The only place that we really had to get a separate train pass was in the two communist bloc countries, and that was Hungary and Yugoslavia. And they call that the high adventure route, by the way, back then, and I think it probably still would be. But at this time, right before the Iron Curtain came down, we had some very interesting experiences there. Of course, you had to stay in places where the state recommended, because they were state-controlled by the Communist Party. And but we had to be very careful what we did in any of those countries, because you were watched, and their laws are different than what our laws were. So you had to be very careful what you did. Even me shooting film out the windows, they yelled over the PA systems for me to stop.
Hungary. Yeah, we were leaving
Hungary and going down to Yugoslavia. Yeah, toward Belgrade.
This was probably months, if less, before war broke out, and they stopped the train and
came aboard, took the
confiscated
camera
John's
away.
camera and my little Instamatic, and told us to film no more.
No
And
pictures.
we're not really certain as to why until several miles down the track, as it was getting dusk, and the edges of the tree lines were military tanks tucked back into the tree lines. It was a very frightening experience.
Now what you see here is, I believe, Budapest, this is.
Yes.
And some of the buildings in Budapest. Budapest, by the way, in Hungary is two cities. Buda on top of the hill and Pest on the bottom of the hill.
What divides the two cities?
Probably the Danube River, Donau, they call it.
They call it Donau.
Donau.
But it's the Danube River. It's a beautiful thing.
That was their parliament that you just saw there.
I don't think there was a place that we went where we didn't experience hospitality. And even though John and I do not know any foreign languages, the communication was very rarely a problem.
You can see Buda on the hill there and Pest down below. And of course we met some couples there and on the trip that were traveling also.
We met that gentleman in Greece.
In Greece, I believe we met him in Greece, yes. And if you'll see us there, we're sitting right below the Parthenon. This is after, of course, we lost our camera going down through Yugoslavia, so you don't get to see that. This is where we're in Athens, Greece.
And John literally lost his shirt.
I lost my shirt to some
We were
Athenian.
staying in Athens, and we were in this, had a little tiny balcony, and I washed his shirt out by hand and hung it outside to dry, and a big wind came and blew it out into the street below.
You can see on top of the hill there the Parthenon and Acropolis.
It was a beautiful, beautiful place to be in Athens. We were really disappointed because at that time
They had a strike
the
going.
tourism cabinet was on strike, so we weren't allowed to go to the top.
But that helps them make a living, and we can understand that.
But what we were able to see, it was a real experience and a real joy.
And it was a wonderful experience sitting on top of the restaurant, looking up there right at the Colosseum and
The
the Plaka and the Parthenon and all of the old historic structures there in Athens, Greece. And I sang a little song or two too, didn't I, June?
What a surprise.
What a surprise.
What a surprise.
That gives you an idea there.
When we left Athens, we went to Patras.
Yeah, went right through Corinth and then on over to Patras.
Now, correct
In
me if
Greece.
I'm wrong, but the ferry we were on, we went out through the night, we were in the Aegean Sea, and in the middle of the night, a storm came up. And our little compartment had bunk beds, and I was on the top bunk, and it tossed me out of the bed. That's
Absolutely.
how rough
That's how
the
bad
waters
the storm
were.
was. And it was up over top of our little
Our little porthole.
porthole window.
When we got on, we were way, way high up on this. When we say ferry, we're not talking the Anderson ferry. We're talking like a freighter, where there were buses and semis on the bottom of this ship that transported from one island to another. And they hit a really heck of a storm, and we weren't really sure we were ever going to see anything again except Jesus in heaven.
It was quite an experience. And then we went on to, there's a little bed that we had to sleep on.
Who's that good looking dude? Look, you really have hair there, John.
I did, didn't I? Oh my.
Is that in Salzburg?
Now that might have been Salzburg there, these pictures that you're seeing
The
right
fortress.
now. As you can see, I'm a little thinner there, folks. Lots of beautiful churches that we toured and saw. And I think that might have been that St. Mark's Church, June. Might be
In
wrong.
Venice? I think that is on Patras.
On Patras, oh yeah, it was on Patras, wasn't it?
Yes. In Corfu. We went to Corfu.
Now here we are, this is still in Patras. Remember we went up on top of the hill there?
And we were invited to sit with these neighbors as they were sitting along the street drinking ouzo.
Ouzo.
Well, we didn't know what ouzo was till we had some, and oh boy, ouzo is really delicious, but very strong.
Very strong.
Liqueur.
But it was nice to just to meet with the local folks.
We had such a wonderful time being able to try different foods, and just the cultures were such a wonderful experience. And of course, wherever we went, what was my main objective?
And there's the manager of the hotel, the great Greek manager of the hotel, who was so nice to us, brought us up a bottle of beverages.
And fruits.
And fruits.
Yeah, it was very sweet.
And then we headed over to the Greek island of Corfu after we left Patras.
One of my major objectives, I'm a chocolatier.
That's right. She loves her chocolate, as you will see in the show.
I did. I'm a recovered chocoholic as of 3 years ago. But you will see me. I promise.
In her worst days of eating chocolate.
I've had chocolate from every country that we traveled in. And enjoyed every bite.
That's right.
Unfortunately, there were a lot of that chocolate was meant to come home to children and siblings, but it didn't make it across the waterways.
Beautiful cliffs all along this area, and of course you see here some of the animals in the
on
Corfu, on the Greek island of Corfu.
What a wonderful, that in itself was a wonderful experience. He was looking at you like, John, do you really have to take this picture?
I know.
I've kiddingly said to John, there are many books out, dummies for this and dummies for that. And I said, maybe we should call this the Europe trip traveled by dummies.
Right.
Because we proved many times over that we had some serious dummy experiences.
That's right. Well, I tell you what, right now you're seeing the Colosseum in Rome. So we jumped ahead here a little ways and are showing some pictures from Rome itself and our trip. Of course, I can tell you this, that there's a whole history to the Colosseum there, but it was really neat to sit right across the street from it and have some pizza, I must say. We traveled there by car, by the way. We befriended somebody by the name of Musafer from Turkey. He happened to be a pipe smoker, and I gave him some pipe tobacco on the boat coming over to Brindisi, Italy, and then we switched to his car. He had a Mercedes and offered to let us ride with him, so we rode with him to Naples, and then from Naples on up through Florence, and then on up to Rome. Mm-hmm. And by doing that, we got there quicker, and also we got to get a taste of what it was like to travel by car through the country. And that was quite a wonderful, wonderful time. Now there you see some
Venice.
pictures of, this is Venice here, where we stayed in the little hotel there with Johnny and I think it was the Lucian Hotel. But it's on the video. It tells you. You can see all these things in more detail when you watch the show.
We had no intention of staying as long as we did in Venice. I'm personally, I'm not a shopper, and I just thought perhaps this was going to be a tourist trap. We fell in love with Venice. It was an experience in and of itself.
Very romantic.
Romantic and beautiful and
just lots of things to see.
So much fun. Beautiful Venetian glass. Oh my goodness, the crystal. Beautiful things. And the history there.
Of course, this is back at the Colosseum again here.
Was
what's left of the Colosseum. And there's a lot left to see there. And the history, of course, of the gladiators and the Christians and the people that were there that fought with each other. Miss June, bless her heart.
And Mr. Zach.
And Mr. Zach. And it looked like Queenie was there too.
Queenie's here right now.
Queenie's here right now. There's Musafer, the guy from Turkey that we rode with. Didn't know I had a picture of him there. That's good. We had about 350 pictures altogether on the trip. Of course, most of the things that we did was video, and we did take a lot of pictures, but mostly video. And you will see that if you watch the shows. We had a brand new Canon camera that we opened up on the train, and unpacked it and used it that very first time. Luckily, we had enough battery power. We had to charge our batteries every night, and I had enough little small mini DVD tapes that we filmed this on, and then converted them to VHS tapes, and then now converting them to DVDs so that you can see the show on television. 26 years later, I had it on television.
Is that how long we've been married?
That's how long we've been married.
Wow.
We had renewed our marriage vows down at Latonia Baptist Church. And by the way, if you don't have a home church, let me recommend several of them to you. Erlanger Baptist is a great church. We were out there the other night at a big revival for prayer meeting service. Enjoyed that. Then you've got, of course, Oak Ridge Baptist, where Randy Wallace is a minister. One of the best Baptist ministers, one of the best people you would ever meet, Randy Wallace. And then, of course, down at Dan Francis is a minister down in our church at Latonia Baptist, where I grew up and went as a young man, and where Miss June and I go now, down at Latonia Baptist Church. And we have a great time down there. Some great people down there that Latonia Baptist. Come on down and join us. You're welcome. As my old cousin Willie would say, Willie GEIMAN would say, there's a chair waiting for you right there.
That's right.
So come on down. There's no excuses.
There's a beautiful
that's what's that New Schwarzstreik
Castle.
The new home, man, what a beautiful place nestled in the mountains. Oh my gracious sakes alive, wait till you see that on video. I mean to tell you, it is strikingly beautiful. You'll see all the inside of it, hear about it. There's where we were at the ski resort, June, right there.
We took cog trains to the
Cog
top
train
of
to the top of the peaks of the
the
mountains.
Alps in Italy and in Germany and in Switzerland.
You'll see
And
some,
Austria.
and
There's a little
Austria.
snippet there.
And Italy. You'll see them all, and the beauty of it is just unbelievable. But you'll be able to see it on video on the show, so we hope you enjoy all of the effort that we put into filming it and editing it some 25, 26 years ago when we first showed it, and then now when we can show it all across northern Kentucky and in 1 hour shows on DVDs. By the way, I'm also doing a show out at the flea market right now, Richwood Flea Market, called Flea Marketing. We've done about 13 shows out there. I'm working on the 14th one. We've got a booth out there right now. This is our 9th show this evening on our trip to Europe by train. June GEIMAN Stephenson, my wife, and myself would like to take this opportunity to thank you for watching our program for these last 9 shows. I'm sure that several of them that you haven't been able to sit through the entire thing, but I hope that you've enjoyed some of the experiences, some of the sights, some of the enlightenments that we've had a chance involved in this trip through Europe. Again, recapping, we traveled some 7 countries, beginning with Austria and Vienna, going to Budapest, Hungary, down through Belgrade, Yugoslavia, and what they call the high adventure route all the way down through Thessalonica and down to Athens, Greece by train, across to Patras and the Greek island of Corfu, on over to Brindisi, Italy, up through Bari, over to Naples, and up to Rome and Venice, Florence, and then on up into Austria, Salzburg and Munich, Germany, Garmisch, Berchtesgaden, on back down to Innsbruck and Zurich, Switzerland, and then a little town called Lucerne, Switzerland, and trips up and down the lake and through the Alps
the visits through the salt mines in Austria and to the highest peaks in Germany and also Switzerland, and then flying out of Geneva. And of course our program this evening is the end, coming back from the Alps and headed over towards Geneva, Switzerland, and flying out of there. So we want to thank you for watching the program this evening. We hope that you've enjoyed it, and if you'd like to make any comments to us or ask any questions of us about the trip itself, in case you're planning a trip to Europe, let us know. We'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about staying at bed and breakfast places and how to do it economically. Think it'd be too risky for me to open this door?
Yes. Don't even think about it.
I'm an old trainman.
I don't care.
Just a little bit.
And don't you hang on to him either. Yeah, right. We're not the
What's in it for me?
We're now pulling out of Interlaken and headed for Lucerne. Blue, clear water. Visuals and an interesting conversation. The station. Pardon me. Brienz.
Want to sit here?
That's lovely.
The army didn't want to.
Did they?
The army
And the coming back from Interlaken, back on the beautiful mountain. See the beautiful scenery in the valley below. Beautiful church scene. Before arriving back, beautiful, wonderful. You guessed it, folks. June, feeding the ducks of the world in old Lucerne. Just arrived back from the mountains, and of course this city, which is celebrating its 700th birthday. Castle up on top of the hill. The old tire and the wood bridge that we walked across last night, across the Reuss River. duck houses all along here for all kinds of ducks. And believe me, there is all kinds of ducks here. Word's out that June's feeding. Yep. June's a majestic swan. Swan, 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 swan. And in the old town, beautiful little shop of the little Swiss man. There last night, checking it out tonight, entertainment. The medieval section.
If they're too expensive, then we're going to McDonald's.
They're not too expensive. June checking out the menu of the Stern. Like they got a festival. The old wood bridge. The Roos River. What?
Would you like to check this out?
Yes, I'd like to check that out. I'd say you look real good, ma'am.
Back up a little bit.
Oh, just a little bit. There's a little lasagna. Oh, okay. It's already running. All you got to do is just point it at us, and
Just the
don't even have to do a thing. Just point it at us. It's already going.
just the
Just
so
look right through here and see us.
and here.
It's already going. No, you don't even need to do that.
It's on.
It's on. Ah, yes, you're beautiful, my dear. Lasagna, vino, by the Roos River. Yes, my darling. Ah, yes.
Don't fall in.
Hello, America.
Hello.
Thank you very much. Now you push that.
What's your name?
My name is Stephenson. I am from Yugoslavia. My nationality is Albanian. But I'm not danger.
And the name of the restaurant?
It's Chef. It's restaurant and hotel.
Good. In Lucerne.
Yeah. Salatella. with eye.
June's feeding the ducks again.
There you go.
Pretty, huh?
I know, you guys too.
Where we've just learned that we cannot extend our flight, our time here, because if we miss our flight, it costs us $2,000 each one way to fly back. The old bridge. Yes, feeding all the animals. Hello, buddy. How do you feel? Tough day. Market? Fresh apples. Other assorted goodies. What's your name, sir?
Weber?
Mr. Weber. You're a gentleman and a scholar, and a man of great knowledge. And this must be your daughter? Is that your daughter? Oh, isn't it? So maybe it might be your daughter. Nice to meet you, and it's a pleasure to be.
Nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure to be in your store.
Yes.
You have a lovely shop here.
You like it?
Lots of fine goods.
Yes, it is nice. Now we do it.
8 times 20 is 160.
Touring the streets of Lucerne. And all the shopping areas are Miss GEIMAN and myself. And the beautiful little trinkets that one likes to look at. And the lady that waited on us at the meat counter.
What happens when you wait on Americans?
Doesn't matter.
And while here, to the new subway area where the railroad station shops will be located. The escalators. Traveling through the countryside, leaving the town of Lucerne and headed for Geneva, our final stop out before our flight tomorrow morning. See some farmers doing some of the work on their crops, planting the crops, little streams, typical Swiss homes. camera run for a period of time here while we're traveling to give you a little flavor of some of the beautiful sights that you see, and just the ordinary sights traveling through the countryside by Swiss train. Little logging mill here, lumber mill. That's some beautiful farmland there. Oscar Mung digged in. And we'll say goodbye to our friends from down under, Australia.
Mesdames et messieurs, nous arrivons à Bénin. Nous le train repartira au Fribourg de Lausanne-Genève Airport.
Oh, pretty.
And pretty.
Yeah. Pretty city.
Oh yes, here we are in Bern.
That's so nice.
Might be able to get a quick bus tour or something.
GEIMAN caught in the act of taking the chocolates. Miss GEIMAN. Anything coming up I should film?
Probably have a better shot of town. From this angle, it's not real
Pretty little
close.
town.
See?
Yeah, I can get that. There's a field of rape. Rape oil is made from this. Very pretty. Huge rape field back there in the back. Some fishermen down here. Huge river. Beautiful day for our last full day in Switzerland. in Freiburg. Freiburg?
Mountains, snow top. Where'd he go? He's way back there.
Very pretty. The lake and river in the background. Out of Freiburg. Mountain cap, white caps that you can see. This is Freiburg.
Up on some smoke. Hold on, I don't know what it is. Probably a plant.
Let's see John Calvin's house here, and
What were you saying about this
the home
town up
of
here on the hill?
Rousseau. That's the town up there, that the old town, the old fortress where I'd lock you up and keep you under lock and key.
And do what?
Wouldn't you like to know? That's the lake. Isn't that beautiful? Lake Geneva.
Probably grape vineyards. Holy cow.
I guess they're great.
It's all grape. I'll have a bottle.
Nestled in the mountains, the bright sun.
Sure, that sun's not gonna hurt the wings.
No, it's okay. Beautiful, isn't it? What a sight. I told you we'd be coming in this. Beautiful.
Which also included the orchards. It was all coming in.
Geneva.
Getting his mouse to
Hello.
the house.
Oh, really?
And this is the lovely young lady that checked us in, hit the hotel at home, and your name is?
Veronica.
Veronica.
Yes.
And Veronica. And of course, here's John after the trip, just sort of laying around with his buddy.
Book.
Book?
Yes.
This is Book. And June has done found another pet. As you can tell, we're right at home here at home. Hello, Book. Yes, we love you. Book is about, how old, June?
14.
14 years old. And you know what that is in dog's age. And we're just so tickled to see Book here with us.
98.
Book's
2 years shy of
98.
100.
So, nice to see you, Book. We love you. And my darling June, headed to our final room. A small elevator for 2 people. No comments, June. With June's motorcycles are very prevalent in this country, and there's our hotel where June and I are staying this evening in Geneva, overlooking this beautiful little Genevan street. Roses coming up here, and it's a beautiful little park, and a nice day to sit on the park bench, watch the tulips we missed back home.
Tulip tree.
Here's a tulip tree. Very pretty. Around Geneva. Old Geneva we're headed for. Well, we're headed for it. It's part of it. It's a little garden going. We gotta wait till we get over the river. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Tulips in bloom in Geneva. And petunias.
Mountain's not full yet. Gorgeous. Cheese.
Take one of them together, huh?
You want me to get one of you two?
Yeah.
You two?
Oh.
They're like your everyday tourists. Wait a minute. They're like roses.
Beautiful, aren't they?
They're like roses. The yellow ones? Beautiful. Wouldn't that be a nice swimming pool?
Mm-hmm. Beautiful shot of Geneva, the steamer on the lake, all the way around, even to where, oh, guess who? Walking up the streets of Geneva. Yes, it is. Miss GEIMAN. The streets of Geneva. Mountains in the background. Beautiful. Watches and jewelry. Russo's Island Memorial.
Okay.
Rousseau, the loving philosopher that wrote about love. Philosophy, romanticism. However, I come to stand before you to tell you about something of which I know little about, except to say to you, my friends, June has inspired in me all the greatness that can reek of one's love. Have I told you, lady, that I love you, and I tell you once again somehow? Have I told you lately that I love you, little June? Well, June, I'm telling you right now.
John likes him too. He's baking him out.
Do we want to go across now?
I think so. Yeah, this is putting his foot up. Puppy dog.
Old Town Geneva. Picks up the reflection from out here. Yeah. Moved, I presume. Sundial on the wall here. What kind of trees are these, Jen?
Oh. I don't know.
It used to protect the city, the old town. June's getting her gun loaded up.
Terrible, sorry. You know you're on.
Yes. The home of Jacques
I'm sure this is just
de Cool.
car.
The cathedral in Old Town.
We're just gonna go down this way.
Which way you want to go? Going down. They're pretty, huh? Let me zoom it in here.
You're
Yes.
on. Oh, we're filming ourselves.
Yeah, we're filming ourselves. Now let me back off and say, yes, my darling. We have a little runny nose, but other than that, things are
We're
doing real well.
easily entertained, ladies and gentlemen.
We're easily entertained. And we even like to give each other a little kissy kissy. Wonder if I got that on there. Mercy sakes alive, X-rated.
Are you on?
Yeah. Beautiful.
John had a sex change.
Sean had a sex change here.
Both women.
Uh-huh. Room in
industry's difficulties by insisting that governments
Geneva
coordinate
was
their approach
quite
to
adequate.
scrapping. Barge
And,
owners supported to start with by government loans will have to pay a levy
for about
for
85
every ton
francs.
they own into a fund. Those
Got
who
a nice
stack
little
barges
room.
will get 100 times that back.
And
Richard
June, as
Prince
you
off
can
the
see, is ready to go.
report.
Get to the airplane.
Has a barge problem.
Plug the date in here. It's May the 3rd. Yeah, we leave today. 6:52 a.m. Yeah. Little corner shower.
We assume that demand won't increase to the extent that capacity has increased.
Anything you'd like to say this morning to the listening audience, Miss Geiman?
Goods which are transported on inland
Huh?
waterways.
Are you ready to fly home?
Scrapping boats relies costs money.
We're on our final leg, headed for our 6-minute ride to the Geneva airport.
having dinner and visiting old Geneva last evening.
This is the Good Morning America or Today Show. Brian Gilmore, Jean Polly.
Jane Polly, or is it June GEIMAN?
June Guyman Polly. June Guyman Polly Stephenson.
Time for the U-Rail pass. All over is places to store your baggage at the station, and the gentlemen that work there are expert, knowledgeable, and very courteous, and we appreciate their efforts.
It's crazy.
Security.
Passengers Christiansen, Jensen.
These are on camera now.
Okay, on there after bed.
Won't be long, but
Periscope up. Surveying out the plane. This is security.
batteries are out.
Batteries are in.
This weekend passes over. We're good.
4 exits and other safety features of the airplane.
And we're going to have liftoff. We hope.
Sounds like a good point.
That's how I motivation. Travel there all the time.
Anything that you can't control is pretty risky. What are you doing?
We will start you off with a 3,000-mile enrollment bonus. Then every time you fly Pan Am, the Pan Am Shuttle or Pan Am Express, or use our travel partners, you will earn valuable mileage credit. World Pass members also have the luxury of pre-selecting their in-flight meals from our unique World Pass.
cigarette is all they really want. 'Cause
Right,
they
you're on urge tamers. Perhaps it can help us with those individuals that are in a deep shock. They still are. They need serious, they need attention now. And you could send it to me. I'm Dr. Haig, H-A-I-G, Kafafian, capital K-A-F-A-F-I-A-N, on Honeysuckle Road at Llewellyn Park. That's L-L-E-W-E-L-L-Y-N, Llewellyn Park, West Orange, New Jersey, 07052. I would appreciate that very much.
It's already running. All you gotta do is hold it, name it. All right. Don't push any buttons. Okay. There you go.
So you got them all. Oh, I didn't know we were all okay.
Now, you can tell me this is your honeymoon.
This is our honeymoon. I'm an old country boy. Of course, old country boys always break out into a little song. Have I told you lately that I love you? Can I tell you once again somehow? Have I told you lately that I love you, little darling? Well, darling, I'm telling you right now. Bravo! To our friends from Armenia, around the world. Danke. The house, thanks to Barbara and Amy and Guy. Guy's fixing us a little Diet Coke. Let's date and time this little deal here. May the 4th, 1989, 2:23 a.m. Well now, it's 2:23 a.m. their time. So we'll need to change that because here at Seville Court, Fort Mitchell, Kentucky time, it's 8:20.
What is wrong? I don't know.
The clan here that helped keep the place in order while I was gone, Jay.
Let you all try to get some sleep.
Stop by to greet us home. That's our daughter Michelle. Anything, and she's brought a beautiful little present. So we'll go ahead and take a this is what she brought for June for a little wedding. Home at 127 Seville Court. And this ends our program, some 18 hours of it, I suppose, counting all 9 shows on our trip through Europe by train. We hope that you've enjoyed these films and that it's been something of an educational experience and an enlightening experience, something entertaining. Needless to say, we're not experts at camera work. We're not experts at writing script. Our quips and our sayings all come from our heart. Most of what you've seen was the entire footage because we wanted you to travel with us, and be a part of the trip, see the pitfalls, the idiosyncrasies, all of the little foibles that humans have in making such a trip. But I want to point out one important thing about this trip. The Lord was with us, kept us safe, protected us. We took along our Bible and read each morning a passage from the Bible and said our morning prayers every day we were on the trip, as we do each and every day. And as I said, the Lord was with us, and we learned a lot from this trip. We learned that 2 Americans can leave native Kentucky, even though they've never been out of the continental United States and speak no foreign languages, can travel throughout the world and survive and have a good time at doing it. And you can do it rather reasonably and economically if you watch your P's and Q's and practice a little common sense and shop around. We never had a single room reservation in advance at all. We did have some assistance from Tours Incorporated, Dick Murgatroyd and Therese there that works with him. And they assisted us in some of our plane reservations and some of our itinerary ideas and laying it out where we were going to go in advance. We studied several books, Frommer's book on traveling through Europe on so many dollars a day, which he's written over and over year after year. And we'd had some relatives and some friends that had tried this before. So it was quite an experience for us, and it's something that you can do too. And several of the places we stayed are places where you could fly over and stay for a longer period of time and do little side train trips. The trains are magnificent, and they're very safe in most parts of particularly Western Europe. The opening up of the communist bloc countries now will be even more of an adventure for people to travel. So not only travel in your own state of Kentucky, which is a beautiful area to see, as June and I can attest to by the tour that we made through all 120 counties of our Commonwealth first, but we've been now through most of the continental United States and now on a trip through Europe. You can too also make these types of trips. Just plan ahead, be careful, use common sense, and practice the old golden rule: do unto others as you would have others do unto you.
Kentucky is my land. It is a place beneath the wind and sun, in the very heart of America. It is bounded on the east, north, and west by rivers, and on the south by mountains. I didn't have a choice as to where I was born, but if I'd had a choice, I would have chosen Kentucky. And if I could have chosen wind to breathe, I would have chosen a Kentucky wind, with the scent of cedar, pine tree needles, green tobacco leaves, persimmon and sassafras. I love the wind blowing through the redbud and dogwood trees. If I could have chosen a spot in Kentucky, I would have chosen Covington, the place where I was born, where generations of my people have lived, and some still live. Here too I have always lived, where I follow the little streams and creeks that flow over rocks between the hills and rivers, where in season we hunted the wild game. Skilled as an Indian, with dogs by my side, I enjoyed this land of sunlit waters, and I enjoyed the 4 seasons. Kentucky has 4 distinct seasons. A young child, each season is 3 months long. The 2 seasons I wanted to be longer and longer were the Kentucky spring and autumn. Summer brought good earthly smells. It gives birth to sugar cane, tobacco, yellow bantam, and silver queen corn. Hot days would bring blackberries, dewberries, and strawberries. All I had to do was get my bucket and gather them. Autumn, the quietness of this season, brings black walnuts. They drop from the mother tree to the ground. In their heavy green shells they ripen. Hazelnuts fall along the cattle paths. Autumn winds are crisp and sharp, refreshing, and a need for sweater or jacket. Sounds in the air are shouts on football fields, with touchdowns, cheerleaders, drums, the smell of popcorn. Warm days and cool nights in the Kentucky's autumn has reason. It brings magical touches to maple trees. Their leaves become a red and golden hue. They flutter to ground where the fields hold pumpkins, baskets of apples, and bales of hay. Winter in Kentucky brings freezing temperatures, frozen lakes, ice skating, ice fishing, smoke swirling from chimneys, heavy snowfalls from dark winter skies. Winds blow fiercely. In swirls they form a white skirt at the base of a maple tree. Farmers can be seen in Kentucky's winter drawing syrup into the buckets from the same tree. The syrup becomes Kentucky's famous sorghum molasses. Spring comes into Kentucky with bursts of energy, melting the frozen soil into a warm, soft earth. It was in the wind. I could feel it, I could taste it, I could see it, and it was beautiful to me. Spring brings back life to our world. Rain comes in a downpour, drenching newly leafed trees. The earth rain gives drink to the tulips, to the violets, forsythia. Calendars are turned into the month of May. Hills are alive with the white dogwoods and redbud trees in full bloom. The wild crabapple blossoms flutter to the ground like pink seashells. The weeping willow's narrow branches finger the wind tenderly. Deep purple violets lay nestled in the Kentucky bluegrass. Only in the spring, only in Kentucky, then the first Saturday in the month of May, is the running of the horses in the Kentucky Derby. The overturned earth gives a sweet scent. A thoroughbred horse's hoofs race to win the roses, and the sound of my old Kentucky home rings in the air. Only in the spring in my Kentucky, from my birth to childhood to old adult, these have been my things, my life. From the nestling birds to the flowering trees, the rivers, the creeks, I learned of God's goodness. I learned of His miracles. For me, my greatest miracle has been my babies and their babies in my life. What fun and happiness they all have given me. I rest now at the feet of Jesus, but my spirit remains here in these hills of Kentucky, but I still have my babies in my heavenly heart until we meet again. This was written by Bernadine Jane Bingham Ogden. A beautiful piece of work about her life in Kentucky. And you too, as a Kentuckian, can have your soul touched by the Lord, by the hearing of these words and remembering the 4 seasons and what they meant to you. Reading by John Stephenson, former Superintendent of Education, Commonwealth of Kentucky, the old country boy. The beauty of a life spent in service for God and humanity. There's nothing in this world more beautiful than a life spent in unselfish service to others. Sometimes it may seem to the world that a life is humble and lowly and of not much value. But there are many instances where these lives are like the modest violet, sending out a beauty and fragrance that is appreciated by both God and man. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. We are all stewards. There is not an owner anywhere of anything. God alone owns. He estimates our gifts for the advancement of His cause, not by their size, but by what we have left. May we labor on, seeking not for glory and applause, knowing that He who clothes the lilies of the field and hears the ravens when they cry will richly repay. Oh, the wrongs that we may righten. Oh, the hearts that we may lighten. Oh, the skies that we may brighten, helping just a little. In the field of destiny, we shall reap as we have sown. Let us therefore put a little sunshine into the unfortunate lives. Our mercies are doubly sweet when they are shared with those who would otherwise feel the bitternesses of want. Big deeds are often glass, while the small ones are diamonds. Wrought into gold, we that pass down life's hour so carelessly might make the dusty way a path of flowers if we would try. Then every gentle deed we've done, or kind word given, into gold would make us wondrous rich in heaven. Life and living are mighty themes. Life is no mere dream, but a sincere reality, and a supreme stewardship of which we shall one day have to render an account. Hence, let us all faithfully strive to fulfill life's greatest purpose. Build a little fence of trust around today. Fill the space with living deeds and therein stay. Look not through the sheltering bars upon tomorrow. God will help you to bear the burdens of others for Him along life's way. Without the shadow, we would not appreciate the sunshine. Clouds need not eclipse the joy in your heart. Even though the skies drizzle, your eyes can be bright. Just because it rains is no reason it should be gloomy. Life's struggle is hard enough at the best, so let us give every uplift possible. Personally, we would rather be a stepping stone on the road to progress than occupy a useless position as an ornament at the pinnacle where there is nothing to be done. Remember that life is not all song. There is much wrong in all of us, so be ready to give a lift where needed. Some dread, some lead dreary ways, and toil beneath heavy loads. When we find one of our fellow men on the downward road, don't pass him with a gloomy frown. You may have troubles too, but he needs a smile from you. Say, brothers, lend a helping hand. Upon the side of weakness stand. Another's burden shared by you will give him courage new. The world has need of friendships true, so give a lift. This was written in 1926 by my darling mother, Garnet Bingham, when she was just a sophomore at the Critton High School in Grant County, Kentucky. It was a little literary magazine called 9 Stars, and I thought you might enjoy it this evening. Another one I thought you might enjoy, Love in a Cottage by Garnet Bingham. Some say love in a palace is most always proud and cold, but not so with love in a cottage. It never, no never grows old. When the long day of toil is over, the homecomer's tired, weary feet scarcely enter the door of his cottage till he is welcomed with love and caresses. A tempting white table is spread ready. The best to be had is for him. Could the gouty old lord in his palace but see, his eyes with envy grow dim. Ere long we hear a noise in the bathroom. 'Tis the patter of little feet. Baby has awakened from his slumbers, and he's coming his papa to greet. The door softly opens, and on the threshold stands a brown-eyed, curly-haired boy. To him nothing is as great as papa, and all 3 hearts throb light with joy. In winter, when the evening meal is over, we gather round a cheerful fire. Reason pleasantry talk matters over, till the curfew rings time to retire. In the summer the evenings are longest. We go in front in the cool and sit down, and watch the green cars glide down the shady street of our dear little country town. O working man, take my advice. Envy not the millionaire. You have the world's best wealth, the love of wife and child. You are far more free from care. Love in a Cottage by Garnet Bingham. Sophomore at Crittenden High School, written in 1926. The Value of a Secondary Education by Garnet Bingham. It is of great value to develop the mind along with the body. An education is never lost. It helps one to enjoy life to a fuller extent, as it greatly increases the learning capacity. When one comes to old age, a well-trained mind is a veritable storehouse of treasure. When one begins to learn as a little child, it is like ascending a ladder. We might call common school the first step, high the second, college the third, and the university the fourth. This would fit us well for the future. The more thoroughly things are learned in the beginning, the greater we are assured of a more firm foundation, and thus we will be greatly helped as we proceed along the halls of learning. When a person applies for a position of any kind, he will generally be asked about his education. If it is a position of any importance at all, one without a high school education will not be accepted. But if one has completed his high school and also his college course, he will be given a much better position than those who have practically no education at all. They will also be paid much better salaries. In years gone by, it was thought that just men should obtain an education, and that women should stay at home and keep house. But now the world has begun to realize that women have their place also. Primary education is a foundation for high school or secondary education. After we have reached this point, we usually want to attend further, and we can then see the great value of obtaining a secondary education. Written in 1926 by my mother, Garnet Bingham, as a 10th grader at the Crittenden High School. Published in the 9 Stars Literary Magazine. A little short story written by my mother, Garnet Bingham, and I'll try to read it to you. She was a sophomore in Crittenden High School when she wrote this in 1926. A little leaven leaveth the whole lump, by Garnet Bingham. As the midnight train from the Far East pulled out of the scraggy little western station, the agent noticed that no lone passenger had alighted. He could see by his dim lantern a tall, slender person of perhaps 20 summers, carrying a heavy suitcase. It seemed that she had expected someone to meet her, but they had failed to receive her communication in time. He gathered from her questions that she was the new school teacher from the East, that the trustee, Mr. Hedger, had told him of Marion Hastings. The agent kindly took her into his own home and called his wife to prepare supper and a place for her, as there were no hotel accommodations in the small town. Mrs. Fieldings, the agent's wife, gave her some idea the next morning of the people with whom she was to spend the next few months. It seemed there had been no school for a few years, and no church or Sunday school within miles. She soon learned with what she had to contend when she started to Mr. Hedger's home the next morning, a distance of about a mile. She, being on foot, was overtaken by a man in a buggy, and he asked her to ride. Marion, always having been among people whom she could trust, never thought of refusing to ride, but wished she had not, as the man was very impertinent and tried to put his arms around her. She tried to jump from the buggy, but was prevented by him. Then she screamed for help. She was relieved to see a man on horseback come galloping across the plains. The ruffian no sooner saw him than he allowed her to alight and drove away at a rapid speed. When the young man reached her, she briefly explained the situation to him as to where she was going. He was very courteous and asked her to allow him to accompany her the rest of the way. Although dressed in the rough garb of a cowboy, she perceived an intangible something about this young man that led her to believe he lived in quite different surroundings. He seemed to be about 25 years old, with kindly brown eyes and a tan, sunburnt face, and she noticed as he lifted his sombrero that he left her a mass of brown curls that would remind one of the head of a child. She thought it suited his name, which he had told her was Douglas Mansfield. He mounted his horse and galloped off down the road. She went on into the house, where she was met by a tall, raw-boned man of perhaps 50. She was duly introduced to the family, consisting of several touse-head youngsters ranging from 2 to 16 years old. The mother reminded her of a modest brown wren. The next day Marion began her duties as schoolmom to some 20-year-old scholars of the Hedger type. She began teaching them cleanliness along with their lessons. She taught them how to take proper care of their teeth, hair, and nails. In several cases she aroused the antagonism of the mother, but she persisted and was so efficient in every way that finally they left her alone. But Marion, being an ardent Christian, grieved her righteous soul from day to day to think that there was no Sabbath school for her children. She could see that about all they heard at home was card playing and drinking. So she decided to canvass the community and try to organize a Sunday school. It took courage, but she kept at it, and the Lord surely helps those who try to help their fellow man. So she visited every home and was surprised how many of the parents belonged to some church, probably to one back east or at a distance. Many promised to come to allow their children to come. She had about 20 the first Sunday, grown-ups and all. Even Mrs. Hedger slipping into the back seat exactly like a scared rabbit. Sunday after Sunday she met with them and soon found some parents capable of teaching classes. Her school grew to 50 or 60 children and parents together. The young man, Douglas Mansfield, was a regular attendant, and she could see during some old hymn, or probably a prayer, that he would often be moved to tears. One evening after Sabbath school, he walked home with her and told her his story. He had been a wild, carefree youth, and had one day, under the influence of liquor and some bad companions, he had forged his father's name. Without waiting to see what would become of him, he fled to the West. It had now been more than 4 years, and he had never communicated with his home folks. The confession moved Marion very much, and she begged him to write to his mother, and she told him of the pain and silence it must cause his parents. As they were talking so earnestly, the doctor of the community drove past them, a dark, sinister man by the name of Evans, who had paid marked attention to Marion since her arrival, and had become bitter toward Mansfield as a probable rival. One Monday, some of Marion's pupils failed to arrive, and others told of their sickness. She often visited and ministered into the little suffering ones. As a consequence, was thrown into the doctor's company quite a bit, although she tried to avoid him. One day as she left one of the patients' house, she was overtaken by him. He told her of his love for her and begged her to be his wife. She refused, and after pleading in vain, he became furious, told her she loved young Mansfield, and threatened her she would never wed him. She overheard some men talking that night about the doctor at Hedger's, where she boarded. They said that he had drifted there from no one knew where, and of some of the unkind things that he was suspected of doing. He refused to go where they were too poor to pay him. In regard to religion, he was almost an infidel. Then Marion realized why she had never liked him, and was glad. The weeks sped by, and the quarantine was finally lifted, and Marion's school opened again with all the children present, except 2 who had gone back to God whom gave them. One Sunday after the Sabbath school was over, Marion broached on the subject that had long been heavy upon her heart. She pleaded with them to organize a church and build a place of worship so they would not have to meet in the schoolhouse. Their hearts being made tender by their recent affliction, they were soon persuaded. Marion had the joy of seeing a church organized with 23 baptized believers. Only 3 more weeks of Marion's school, and she was going back east. They all had learned to love her and regretted to see the day of her departure arrive. During this time she saw much of young Mansfield and a very little of the doctor. Although Douglas had not yet declared his love for her, he had shown his love for her in many different ways. The doctor was more morose and cynical, as another practicing physician had moved near them. Marion had met him, and he seemed to be a real Christian gentleman. Blessed indeed is that community that has a real Christian physician to minister to its needs. For while the hearts are touched and softened with the sickness and bereavement, what a glorious opportunity to minister also to the sick soul. This new doctor also promised to preach for the new church until they could secure a regular pastor, and their place of worship was being constructed. Marion had planned an entertainment for her kiddies, in which all had parts, and they were thoroughly enjoying the preparation for it. One day, on her way from school, young Mansfield joined her and told her he had written to his parents and had heard from them. They were very anxious for him to return, declaring that they would never have permitted him to leave had they known. He was going home on the following day, Tuesday, and so now he felt free to tell of his affectionate love towards her and ask her to be his wife. Marion promised him as she returned his love, and her heart was filled and full of joy. She had known little love in her early life, for being an orphan she was reared by some of her relatives, who were relieved by her absence. She saw no more of Mansfield, but worked hard the following day to train her children to speak their parts on the program, and on Thursday was rewarded by seeing all do well. Along about 3 o'clock a messenger rode up to the door and handed her a telegram. It took an effort to control herself as she read the letter from Douglas Mansfield, that he was home and his parents had persuaded him not to return. Their love affairs were all a mistake, as he had been reared in such different environment than hers. Marion felt her heart was broken, but her pride came to her rescue, and she never betrayed her true feelings to the wondering children, but dismissed them for the evening with the assurance that on the following day they would have a golden day. Although Marion spent a sleepless night of torture, she was at the schoolhouse at the appointed time Friday. The house was packed, and the doors and windows full of proud parents. All seemed so glad and happy, except poor Marion. It was so hard to bear. When the entertainment was almost over, a surprise awaited her. Young Mansfield entered the door with a sweet-faced old lady on his arm. As soon as possible, he made his way to Marion and introduced the lady as his mother. The excitement was more than Marion could endure, and shock of joy at seeing him. So when the others had departed, she showed him the telegram. It was needless to say that he knew nothing of it, so they tried to trace it back to its origin. A boy finally gave it away that Dr. Evans had paid him a handsome price to deliver it to her, but the doctor himself was nowhere to be found. The lady where he roomed said he had left with all his belongings early that morning, and that she had heard nothing from him. He had probably thought that when Marion received the telegram, she would return east, and he could then separate the lovers. But his plans failed. Marion left the next morning in company with her husband and his mother, for he had insisted they be married. here among the people whom she had loved and helped to raise from their backward ways. She left them with joy in her heart, conscious of being of service to God and humanity, and with the sweet strains of the song, God be with you until we meet again, coming from the hearts of her Western people. Written by my mother, Garnet Bingham Stephenson.
And just thinking about our life together over the last 26 years, it'd be nice to say that everything has been peachy keen, but just like the things we saw in Europe, the peaks that were high, but there were also really low valleys. And we've been through a lot of wonderful experiences, but we've also been through some really tough times with health and finances and losing our house. But through it all, God was with us and is with us. I think that if I were going to make a point about our trip, John, is that don't travel your life. Don't go through life without God in your life.
That's right. It's absolutely right. It's a roadmap, and the Bible is the directions. And I'm thankful that we have each other and we have God in our hearts and Jesus in our hearts.
Yes.
And I'm thankful that we live in a country called America, that we're free to do things and to grow and learn and worship as we please. It's a great nation, and we live in a great commonwealth of Kentucky. And I'm really proud of Kentucky. All the travels we've done throughout the United States and even now Europe, and I always enjoy coming home to Kentucky, where the people are the greatest.
I am too, John. If everything, wherever we've traveled, it's always nice to come back home to Kentucky.
And see family, which you've seen on some of these pictures
And our
here.
dear friends.
And we hope you've really enjoyed our program, Europe by Train, Plain Folks and Common Sense, John Stephenson. You'll see me with my brother in the Whosoever Will group. You'll see us at the flea market. Of course, you'll see us and hear us with WIOK 107.5 AM, or FM on the radio dial, the Tri-State Gospel Station with Gil and Jan Hammond, our best friends. And you'll see the three houses right there we built. Of course, one in Cherry Hill. We didn't build it, we lived there, but then Seville Court, 127 Seville Court, 213 Beechwood, 2994 Moffett Road, where I grew up, as well as over on Wolf Road, Taylor Mill. They live in Independence now. There's June's mom and dad when they got married. And there's the World War II veteran, Andy GEIMAN. What a great man. One of the reasons we went to Germany to see the Hitler's Eagle's Nest, where he was on Birch's Garden, where he was one of the first ones in World War II. There's our two cats, Queenie, Queen Esther, and
Blackjack.
There's Larry, June, myself, and Darius Beach, and Mark should be there somewhere. Our friends from Ponderosa. Yep, there's June's family. That's the GEIMAN clan.
From Fort Thomas.
About 600 of them met out there. There's Mike Wong down there, where we had our wedding renewal and where we love to go visit at the Oriental Walk. One of the great sisters that works out there at the Walton Parish. Of course, John and June there, where we went and married some 15 couples and was a part of that by singing to them the love song, You Are So Beautiful, which Billy Preston wrote and sang first to God. You are so beautiful. There's the Hammonds when we had our renewal vows, and my son Guy, Guido Stephenson. Thank you for watching our shows. We'd love to have you, and thank you for being a part of it. And thank you, Miss June, for being my wife. We hope you enjoy the show that we're going to have here for you. June and I, of course, this is 2015.
26 years later, as you can tell.
Right. We just had our anniversary, and of course, that was our honeymoon that we filmed here for you through Europe and 7 or 8 countries in Europe. We enjoyed the whole trip, didn't we, June?
We did. And all of the chocolate.
Not the greatest videography I've ever done. As you can tell, I was inexperienced. In fact, we opened up the camera that we used right on the airplane as we left to head for Europe. But we wanted to thank you for enjoying the show and for giving us the calls and saying thank you to us, as many of you have across the northern Kentucky and Kentucky in general. And God bless you, and we hope you enjoyed the trip as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Any other special words you'd like to say, Miss June?
No, we're just glad that you came along with us.
It was the honeymoon, and it has lasted. And it is still wonderful, and it is still the honeymoon. And we love each other dearly.
We do.
I know it's difficult at times.
It is. And I've given up chocolate.
God's blessed you both.
And God has blessed us both.
That's right. And
we've seen a lot of mountains. We've hit a lot of mountains. We've hit a lot of valleys. But God's been through everything with us. And that we are ultimately grateful for.
June, John, and Video Cam. And as the grandkids say, Grandpa, you're a historic relic. And I said, at least I'm an alive one.
Okay.
And you can call us at 859-750-0000. That's 859-750-0000. Or join us on our Facebook site, John Stephenson, or YouTube, or our website, www.jstephenson.com.
God bless.
Let's see. Okay, I'll count to 3. 1,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
and 3. And God bless you. Bye now.